So welcome everybody to Lede Family Live. I don't know what number session this is, but we're always glad to be back and reaching you guys in your homes or wherever you're hanging out tonight. Hopefully you've got some great wine open. If you do, we want to hear about it. Please use that chat function to let us know what you're enjoying. And if you have questions throughout the night, anything at all, please throw that in that chat as well. There is also a little Q&A button that you can use, but you might as well throw it in the chat. You know, let people know what you're tasting, what you're enjoying these days. Let us know where you're from. You know, say hi. Please use that chat if you are comfortable in doing so. Tonight's plan. So we're going to go through all the new release wines and do a little preview of the 2019 Kalon, Beckstoffer Kalon from Cliff Lede Vineyards, our Cabernet Sauvignon from that vineyard. That wine's going to be released fairly soon. So we'll talk about that a little bit with our winemaker, Travis, here. A couple other little things. If you are a member, again, always check that newsletter. There's a lot of great information in there. There's a wicked lamb ragu recipe in there from Chef Lane up at the Poetry Inn. So if you're looking for a wicked pairing with your Roundabout Midnight or even with the FEL wines, Pinot Noir, try it out. It'll be a real fun night. We do have our Rock Block party coming up May 15th. It is a Sunday and it's a sort of a little midday party. Always the funnest party that we throw. If you've been in the past, you know that it's a really fun time. Members have a special price for this event, of course. It's going to have great food. We'll have some live music and some awesome wine, some library selections of Rock Block, large formats. Truly awesome time to come out, and we're thrilled to see you. If you can't make it that weekend and you want to come see us, you know, we are starting to get into our busier season, so it's always great to get those reservations ahead of time. So if you want to come and see us, please look on exploretalk.com/Cliff Lede Vineyards and find a time slot that works great for you. We'd be happy to see you. And for any of our past webinar episodes, if you're curious to look back at, you know, if you're pulling a bottle out, you want to revisit a webinar where we cover one of the former releases, you can always go on our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and look up Lede Family Wines and you can get all kinds of resources. There's little video shorts on there that introduce some of our wines as well. So check it out. Engage with us on social media, follow us, like us, all that fun stuff. We'd really appreciate it. Now, the plan for tonight, first off, is to get Sarah Green to join us from FEL Wines. We just had her on here and we were doing a practice session and she said that the power went out at her house. So I believe she is joining us from her phone. So let's get her on here. Let's see how this goes. Let's get her in. We got that. There we go. Promote. Okay, looks like that's working. Go unmute, start video. You know, the good old Zoom, it always takes a couple minutes. Look at this, you got in, you joined us, it worked.
I'm here.
Somewhat. I can tell our audio.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're a little frozen, but you're not making like a funny face. So, you know, so that's, at least there's that. But hey, we're gonna power through this. We're gonna make it work. And we're gonna taste some great wine. So Sarah Green, welcome everybody. If you're not familiar with Sarah, she is our winemaker at FEL Wines. Ryan Hodgins is our director of winemaking, but Sarah has recently stepped up into the more significant role of winemaker. And you can already, you know, see the impact she's had on the wines, tasting some of these recent vintages that she's worked on. They are exceptional. We're gonna taste two of them tonight. We're gonna start with the 2021 Pinot Gris from FEL Wines. So Sarah, I'll let you take it away. What have you got to tell us about this beautiful brand new release from FEL?
Well, I'm always happy to talk about the Pinot Gris. So welcome everybody. And if there's ever there's any technical issue, Jason, I assume you'll just you'll take over for me.
I'll do my best.
So the Pinot Gris is always the Pinot Gris is always the snapshot of the vintage, the first wine to be bottled from any vintage. We bottle it after 5 months in the winery, so it's always sort of the first sneak peek of the vintage to come. Of course, the Chardonnay and Pinot will stay in barrel a little longer, but so far, this is a great indication of the very strong 2021 vintage for FEL. The vintage is really marked by low water, of course, but the result of that is a really high concentration in the fruit, which has been a great benefit to all the wines from the 2021 vintage. It's a really exceptional vintage for quality for FEL. So that high concentration manifests itself in these high skin to juice ratios with a lot of texture and flavor really sort of bursting from the glass. The Pinot Gris, FEL's Pinot Gris comes really from the Hein vineyard, which is a vineyard that we manage and lease in a part of the valley we call the Deep End. So, you know, Anderson Valley as a valley, it runs sort of on a diagonal, sort of southeast to northwest, and the further west and north you go, the closer you are to the ocean, the very cold Pacific Ocean, which is sort of funneling cold air down the Navarro River, which is Hein finds itself in this particular part of the valley we call the Deep End. So it benefits from sort of that cold ocean air, slows down the ripening, which is really ideal for Pinot Gris. It allows us to retain a lot of freshness and acid as the grapes sort of develop a lot of flavor on the vine. Pinot Gris is you know, there's not a lot of it, but it is sort of a traditional variety for Anderson Valley. So, you know, this is the valley we know and love deeply. And so it's nice to kind of pay homage to this kind of heritage planting of variety that Anderson Valley is known for, even though there isn't very much of it. But this is 100% Hein vineyard. And this is definitely a very, very bright expression of Pinot Gris generally, but I would say even for FEL, this is probably the highest acid, brightest Pinot Gris that we've made. Yeah, it's another cool thing about Pinot Gris is, you know, it's actually, it's got red skins and white flesh. So it kind of looks almost like a red grape, but produces a white wine. And so the winemaking process is really, a lot of it is geared towards kind of managing that relationship. So we, you know, those red skins are thicker than on a white grape. And so we press really gently in our champagne style press to sort of manage the amount of phenol we're getting from those skins. We ferment it in our 900-gallon oak cask, which is sort of a focal point winery, very cool looking giant oak tank. And that also really minimizes oxygen exposure to the wine and is a part of the maximizing of freshness in the winemaking from grape to bottle for the Pinot Gris.
Okay, well, you pretty much covered everything. So I don't know if I even have any questions. You know, I did maybe want to ask you one thing though. You know, Pinot Gris is like, it's one of those wines, maybe not unlike Chardonnay, where there's such a wide spectrum of styles, right? Because I think a lot of people associate like Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, like sweet, you know, wines that are off dry, that are, you know, from different parts of the world, Italy, things like that. But this is an Alsatian style Pinot Gris, right? Is that what you would say?
Yes and no. I mean, I would say that, you know, if I think about the Pinot Gris that you know influence our winemaking, I would say it's a little bit from all these different corners of the world. So certainly the kind of there's several really excellent examples of Anderson Valley Pinot Gris that are made in a dry style like this one. Certainly there's some incredible Alsatian Pinot Gris that we love. I would say that the Alsatian Pinot Gris, like the Rieslings, can tend to have a broader and kind of waxier character than what we go for, which I think some of that is inherent in the variety, and we sometimes get that a little bit. Sometimes like a little bit of a linen character that can come through in the wine that I think is also something I associate with Alsace. But I would say that the Pinot Gris that, you know, I sort of think about Friuli a lot as, you know, a cooler part of Italy, not a kind of, not the place that we're growing sort of that everybody thinks about, but the sort of like really the high caliber, serious white wines, or for example, a DJ. I think those are places where we see more of the character, that kind of really zesty, slatey character that's also got a fruit counterpoint, because there's a lot of fruit in this wine, but it's contrasted with that chalky, textural sort of citrus zest.
Nice. Well, it's delicious. Happy to see that the 21 vintage is showing all the potential that we thought it would have. So wonderful. Looking forward to more 21s coming out in the next year or so. Looks like Sarah just dropped off, and that was totally unintentional for it to end right at that time. So we will work on getting her back as soon as oh, there she is. She's coming back. She's coming back. I don't know. Maybe the power's come back on and she's reconnecting to Wi-Fi. Sarah, are you there?
Quite the storm going. Can you hear me?
I caught that. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry about that. There's
okay.
Quite the windstorm going.
We'll power through. Time for Pinot Noir. So we got the 2020 FEL Wines Pinot Noir. Oh my gosh, it smells amazing, as these wines always do when they're released. I will do a quick screen share here if I remember how to do this. You go from doing Zooms like every day of your life to every few months, and some of these talents I've lost. But here we go. Here's the Anderson Valley. Hopefully everybody can see that nice and big and bright on their screens. We've brought this map up in the past. You can see in that thumbnail up there, the Anderson Valley is much, more Northern California, closer to the coast. And this map gives you an idea of all the different vineyards that we work with throughout the appellation. So Sarah was just talking about the Hein Vineyard, which sits just here in that deep end, as she was talking about. And it is the primary source for our Pinot Gris, but we also source Pinot Noir from there as well. And so Sarah, this wine, this Pinot Noir is a combination of effectively all the vineyards that we work with, right? There's maybe only a couple that are only Chardonnay.
That's right. So I used the expression snapshot earlier to describe the Pinot Gris, but this is also, I think of this one as another kind of snapshot. This time, it's more in terms of the capturing the spectrum of Anderson Valley Pinot Noir. So I always think of the major players in this blend being the sites that we also make vineyard designate wines from. So this is an appellation blend, but it's sourced from really premier sites from the valley that we make very serious vineyard designate wines from as well. So that includes, of course, Farrington Vineyard, which is in that southern spot down there. Exactly. And that's, of course, we make the Farrington Vineyard Pinot Noir. That's bringing a lot really bright, really fresh fruit, really red fruit to the blend. Savoy, which of course, the jewel in the crown for us, our estate, which is bringing the kind of spice character that we love so much. And then Hein is really bringing a lot of the depth and texture from the deep end fruit. And also there's just a little bit of Wendling vineyard. We get very little Wendling, but of course that's a single vineyard wine for us as well. And that adds certainly a lot of bold character. So these are really excellent sites that play very well together in the blend. And we do take quite a lot of time figuring out these blends. But year after year, the harmony between these sites is something we love to see in the glass and at the end of the process. And this is a really strong vintage for Anderson Valley and for FEL. It was a very moderate summer with really kind of ideal conditions throughout the summer for growing. And then of course there was quite a lot of heat right at the end, but what that did is that kind of pushed things along right at the end. And so we really just started grabbing fruit left and right and managed to really capture a lot of freshness, more acid even than we have typically seen in the past, which is, something now that we've seen that we're really loving capturing more of that in the Pinot going forward. The winemaking is pretty consistent across all these sites. We pick everything separately, all the vineyards, and then the blocks within the vineyards are kept almost all completely separate through fermentation and aging. But the winemaking is pretty consistent. You know, a couple days cold soak, pretty minimal work in tank to the fermentations, just trying to keep them happy and healthy, and then pressing them pretty much right at the point when all the sugar is gone, just really trying to capture the purity of expression of the site. And then sort of standing back and watching those evolve in barrel over the next year and a half.
Nice. And then, sorry, when you put this wine together, I mean, how long do you kind of have everything together in the blend? You know, do you kind of let this marry for a while, so to speak, so that all those flavors integrate?
Yeah. Exactly. So over the last couple of years, we have moved to doing that. So at about actually, we're just getting ready to do it on the 2021 vintage in the winery now. So, you know, at maybe about the halfway point, whenever it seems most reasonable, we will assemble kind of the majority of the blend. We'll do we'll bring things up to tank once we know, you know, some percentage with certainty, before we're ready to commit on all the smaller single vineyard wines. That really gives a huge piece of a huge concentrate, well, the percentage, I should say, of the wine a chance to really knit together, come together in barrel. And then, you know, we spend the rest of the wine's life kind of in the winery figuring out which little pieces complement it and fill it out. So I do think that I think this is now the third year that we've really started to.
Oh, looks like she dropped again. I will stop my screen share there so we don't have to look at the map. Sarah will likely pop back in here. I just have to say that this wine is wildly delicious. Wildly delicious. I love drinking this wine when it's, you know, newly released. Just tons of fruit coming out of the glass. Hopefully Sarah can get back in here so at least we can say a proper farewell. Are you back? Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I'm back.
It's not your fault. We you know, freak accidents. Next time you're going to have to be here in the winery with us or something like that. And then that way we can avoid something like this.
I'll hover over your shoulder next time.
There we go. Well, I think we'll let you go just because it's we are having some difficulty keeping up with the ins and outs and all that kind of thing. But do appreciate you going in and exploring this wine with us. Everybody, you know, if you have more questions about the FEL wines, please shoot us an email, let us know, or throw it in the chat and we'll try to get to that there too. But thank you, Sarah, for having us on. We appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and talk about the FEL wines. Really exciting releases coming out there, even some of the more recent ones with the heritage clones. Hopefully, if you are a member that gets those wines, you've been enjoying those. But we are going to shift now to the Cliff Lede Vineyard side of things. And yes, I am happy to say that I am not sitting here solo tonight. I've got a very nice young gentleman here joining me. This is Travis Bullard. He is the winemaker for Cliff Lede Vineyards. So again, Chris Tynan is our director of winemaking, but Travis has stepped up to take on a little bit more responsibility in that regard. And well, we're thrilled to have you here tonight. I kind of feel like now it actually is like the Tonight Show kind of thing where I've got my guest live with me right here. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, normally I'm used to logging in like everyone else in Zoom. I feel like I'm getting a behind the scenes look here.
Right, yeah, you get to see how the magic happens now. So I'm excited to taste through the new Cliff Lede Vineyards wines. We've got a little Sauvignon Blanc here that's going to start things off. So that's the 2021 vintage. I know everybody was dying just to get this wine into their homes because we didn't make a 2020.
No, we didn't.
And the 2019 ran out, which is you know, never something you want, but at least we got it to the closest point we could, and now we're thrilled that we've got the 2021 here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about 2021? Obviously, you know, for us at Cliff Lede, a better year than 2020.
Yeah,
we didn't make
absolutely.
any wine, but what was the story of 21?
Yeah, refreshing to see fruit come in and to be able to taste some beautiful fruit again. So 2021 vintage started off drought year. So that was kind of the big story for us down in Napa Valley. So a really dry winter running into the springtime, and it just kind of stayed dry through spring. Really moderate temperatures, but yeah, we had low vigor vines, so not as much growth, and then not throwing as much fruit out there. So you know, we were we
less
had
production.
Yeah, we had a lower production, and really carefully watching how much fruit we maintained, and really trying to get focused on optimal ripeness in the vineyard. That was kind of our the big push for 2021. You know, luckily we had really beautiful weather through summer. No big heat spikes or anything like that. So really moderate temperatures, which really helped us out, and helped us get evening ripening, and we were able to really dial in our picking decisions.
So one of the things I noticed right away about this wine, just from tasting it, is there's an elegance here. You know, there's a freshness. Clearly, you know, this is brand new release, so it's not gonna taste like how the 2019 tastes like right now, because it doesn't have that time in bottle yet. But there is a freshness, and I noticed the alcohol level is a little lower, but it still has that beautiful, that textural, element to it. So, how did that relay into the winemaking, right? Because I also noticed from the tech note that you actually used more neutral oak on this than in years past. So just maybe give us the rundown as to some of the stylistic decisions you made in 2021 to make this wine so beautiful.
For sure. Yeah, like what I was talking about with the low vigor vines, we actually ended up, especially with the Sauvignon Blanc, having a little bit shorter shoots. So when we were, one of the things we were worried about potentially seeing in this vintage with the Sauvignon Blanc particularly was what levels of ripeness were we going to get to, and then being able to pick it at the optimal ripeness. So we were a little bit worried about, or I should say, we had this decision, right? So as we're coming into harvest, we're watching the flavors, and we really noticed that we were getting nice ripeness of flavors earlier in the season. And so yeah, we kind of sat on this decision of, are we going to let the sugars maybe catch up a little bit more and let the acid drop out a little bit, and then see if we were going to get more of those riper, more tropical flavors that we're known for, or we're going to strike while the iron's hot and pull off maybe grapes that are a little lower in sugar content. They're going to show a little bit less alcohol. But we really have these lovely citrus, like lemon curd notes that we're known for. So that's what we ended up doing this year. So we brought
this, by the way, this smells like Cliff Lede Sauvignon Blanc. I wouldn't notice you have a much more attuned palate, but I mean, I pick up that little bit of pineapple in there and a little bit of that, that tropical quality. But again, because, lower yields, you were able to use more of the neutral oak, right?
Exactly.
Which helped build some more of that texture and weightiness that you might get if you had, a higher sugar content, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So having this wine that's a little bit lower alcohol, it's 13.6. So it's got a little more freshness in the acidity. And so kind of one of the decisions that we thought of to counterbalance that, we were going to have a little more neutral oak, so we took the stainless steel portion of this blend down as a percentage, and we ended up fermenting and aging more of this blend in a neutral French oak. And so that really, we thought, would give it a little more of the weight, a little more creaminess, kind of counteract some of those things that we would get with a little bit higher alcohol. You would get that mouthfeel. So,
yeah, sure.
So we were reaching for that, and that kind of drove some of those winemaking decisions for us. And yeah, we're really happy with how this 2021 SV turned out.
That's still going to be great poolside, or with some seafood, something, grilled shrimp, something like that. Ceviches, my gosh, oysters.
Oysters. I said last time, and I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking for the 21 vintage. Yeah, it's got. I mean, our Sauvignon Blanc, especially from the East Rutherford vineyard that we get this off of, it always has this beautiful lemon curd texture flavor, and that's been kind of the driving backbone. I think this year we're showing a lot of honeysuckle and beeswax and some of those white peach notes that are really beautiful in this SV. Wow.
Well, we are excited for everyone to get their wine and to open this. and enjoy it over the summer. Get it while you can. We made just over 6,000 cases, which is a little bit less than we made in the 19 and the 18 vintage. But wow, what a fantastic effort, man. Nice work.
Thank you.
Really delicious. Okay, and now we're going to go into the red wines, and we have 3 of which we're going to taste tonight. We're going to start off going as far back in time as we will tonight. That's back to 2009 with the Cinnamon Rhapsody, the Rock Block series, Cabernet Sauvignon. So 2009, I think I graduated college in 2009. Yeah, 2009. That's when
I was out of college.
my
I was
degree.
working harvest down on the Central Coast.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then you came here shortly at like 2010.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah,
I started.
So
I
you
started here at Cliff Lede June of 2010.
So you somewhat worked on this particular wine when it
Yeah.
was in the cellar.
Didn't see the fruit come in during harvest, but
Right.
got to taste the wines in barrel and then watched it get blended and bottled.
Well, I want you to taste it now and tell us your thoughts. I will say that I pulled the cork on this probably an hour and a half ago. And when I first tasted it, I could tell it was a little closed up, but in this last hour and a half, it's just, wow, it's really opened up. It's really blossoming here. Color looks great. I mean, still that deep, beautiful red, a little bit of garnet in there. But let's ask the expert. I mean, what's your thoughts on this 2009?
Yeah, so I actually tasted this and our 2010 SLD cab last Friday night at an event at dinner with a couple of other old wines, and man, this thing was kicking out of the gate. I was really impressed with the texture and the tannins that it still has. You know, this wine being 13 years old, it really kind of showcases the rock block style where it's more hedonistic. It's more voluptuous, and you can really get that on the palate, I think, with the tannins and the structure that this still has. There's a lot of beautiful, like, kind of like milk, chocolate, and currants and black licorice.
Always that chocolatey, cocoa powder thing with
Yeah.
our Stag Leap wines.
But obviously with age, you're getting a little more of the secondary and tertiary flavors. So a little more like baking spices, and still some espresso kind of.
Oh yeah, that's a good
notes in
call.
there.
I get that espresso there for sure. So Cinnamon Rhapsody. So the Cinnamon Girl block sits over on our Poetry Hillside vineyard, and Bohemian Rhapsody is one of the larger blocks that sits down just outside of the tasting room. So 2 great blocks coming together here. 2009, excellent with the age on it. I mean, this is one of those Cabernets that, pull the cork, give it a little bit of air, serve it with dinner. I mean, of course, it's Cabernet, so you can do anything, grilled, red meat, things like that. Some nice hard cheeses or something like that, maybe, post dinner glass of wine.
Yeah, this is so refined. I thought even like maybe a lighter fare than you would normally do for like a current release rock block, like even something like a steak tartare or something, I think would really showcase well with this wine.
That is good.
I mean, with something notable too to say is like this has a lot of life left. Even with this age, like it's still going to show really beautifully for another 5-10 years.
Wow.
I know in the 2009, I wasn't here, but down on the Central Coast, the big note of 2009 was there was a huge storm in the middle of October.
Oh, crazy.
So we got, I think in Napa, it was about 5 inches of rain. And so the big debate was when are you going to leave fruit out through the storm and see what it was afterwards, or are you going to try and bring everything in? And yeah, at Cliff Lede, they did bring all this fruit in before the rain event. So this was harvested, first couple of weeks of August, last weeks of September.
Cool.
And yeah, definitely made the right call there because this is, showing beautiful ripeness.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you need to push this any further, and who knows what that rain would have done, right? So good call, whoever made that call in 2009. All righty. So now we'll jump ahead a decade into the 2019 Roundabout Midnight. No, Roundabout Midnight. Yes,
you got it.
Roundabout Midnight. So I while you're pouring the wine, I'm gonna go, a little fanboy here. I love the band. Yes, that the song Roundabout is one that I can always tell when it comes on in the tasting room. We're at my dad's house, and this picture is from a couple years ago. There's me and John Anderson hanging out backstage. I had the pleasure of hosting him, and he was the nicest guy you would never think like he was this big rock star, but the nicest guy, and signed some albums for us and things like that. So very cool to see, Roundabout finally making its way onto a bottle. And the other block, of course, being After Midnight from a gentleman known as Eric Clapton, although that song, I believe, has multiple renditions. And maybe some of our viewers can let us, these youngsters, we don't know all the history, so you guys can chime in. But I'll go back to our share screen real quick, and I'll pull up the rock block map, just because I know that that's a nice way to sort of touch on the wines that we are, or the specific wine that we're talking about, and blocks that we're talking about. So the first one there, so the Bohemian Rhapsody block for the 2009. So we had the Bohemian Rhapsody there, and Roundabout, as you can see, is also down here on the valley floor. Cinnamon Girl sits up on the Poetry Hillside, so that's that other block for 2009. And then After Midnight is just kind of across this little, what would you call that? There's a little, ridge in there, or valley, in between the blocks, and sits on the on those terraces, those super steep terraces. So After Midnight and Roundabout is what we're tasting. So you got a little bit of the valley floor and a little bit of the hillside coming together here. So
everyone might not know, we're sitting in the white room. So when Jay says that, we've got a front row seat over across the Twin Peaks Vineyard and looking at poetry. So that's what we were looking at that.
That's right. We do have a great view. We got a great bottle of wine though too. So Travis, tell us, 2019. I think we've talked about this vintage a little bit in the prior episodes. So I mean, just the perfect year, right?
It was a winemaker's dream. I mean, it's a little boring to talk about, because like it was absolutely perfect. We really dealt with no challenges. We had plenty of water, beautiful flowering and set. We always maintain our crop level, so we always drop fruit at Cliff Lede Vineyards. We're trying to get between 2 and 3 tons an acre of cab. Like that's where we find that we get the best flavor development in our vines. So, on a year where we're going to get more fruit than that on the vine naturally, like we'll go through and thin, the vineyard team will drop fruit. And so we're really at that perfect level. And so, we just had beautiful, really seasonal temperatures all the way through spring and early June. And then no spikes for summer. That's kind of one of the things we deal with in Napa, is like at some time we'll get this weekend where it kicks over, triple digits.
Usually Labor Day weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah, right with the start of harvest.
But 18, coming off of 18 and then 19, like both of those years, we just had these really ideal growing temperatures. And so basically what that let us do is we were able to, we weren't rushed picking fruit. There was nothing that was emergency to take off. So we were able to go through and harvest every single block exactly when we thought we were at optimal ripeness, like all the way through harvest. We weren't dealing with any kind of rain or inclement weather or heat spikes or anything like that maybe would, where we would normally have to take the fruit off of the vine sooner than we would want to.
Yeah.
And so, this rock block, it's always a blend between blocks on Poetry Vineyard and the estate here on the Twin Peaks Vineyard. And for anyone that knows, like it says, these wines go to 11 on the back. So when we're blending them, kind of the thought process is like, we get to have fun with this wine. We have fun blending all the wines. But rock block, like we really get to kind of cut loose and we take on the persona of like, these are classic rock songs, right? So we can, so when we go through and taste, like really the first pass, that we sit down and taste these wines, we kind of earmark which blends like kind of showcase that rock block style, right? So we're going, the keyword is always like hedonistic, right? Like we're going for enjoyment here. Like we're going for like voluptuous, like we're going for these big
opulent,
just
not over the top,
big,
but
beautiful
like,
tannins, right?
Right
like
at the top.
And so we always have some of those blocks, or some of those vineyard blocks on the estate that lean that way during the vintage. They kind of change, but so we earmark those and we kind of set those aside, and with the idea that this is the perfect place for them.
And then so you end up having this blend of maybe 5 to 10 vineyard blocks that you could bring together, and then you hand the list to Cliff.
Exactly. We give him the list.
He sits down and he goes, okay, what would make a really interesting name.
Right.
And so Roundabout Midnight is what he decided to name the 2019 vintage.
Which is an important point, right? And maybe not everyone knows Cliff is the guy naming this, and he gets a lot of enjoyment out of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't take suggestions, so
we don't give him.
Gotta know that.
We don't give him
you can't tell him what it's going to be, and rightfully so. He knows, he's the rocker. So
yeah, interesting tasting this. So 10 years forward from the 2009 that we. And you can show, it really shows like all those fresh flavors that we get right out of the gate, right? So there's a lot of violets and blackberries and a lot of like kind of like cedar. You're getting a lot of like kind of like cedar and oak barrel notes, right?
I do get the oak, but it's like, it's just the little, I'm getting more on that, like that really concentrated red fruit, like that red currant.
Yeah.
I definitely still get baking spices, but I'm thinking more like, like Christmas time, Christmas cake kind of elements,
Yeah, absolutely. Like a little, just something, just fresher, like fresher flavors, fresher spice. It's more dark and brooding, right?
I have to say though, like you guys, having had many of the 18s recently and now, dipping into the 19s, there's a refinement to this vintage that I think for me sets it apart from 18 or, looking at 15 and looking back to even 13. These wines, the tannin profiles, the structures here, like everything is so dialed in and refined on these 19s.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if it was just the vintage or if it's, because you guys just every year getting better and better, but like this is just, it's a powerful wine, but it still has that approachability. It still has that easy to drink quality.
Yeah, for sure.
Extended finish, powerful, rich wine, but concentrated, but not like
it's not a sledgehammer.
Overbearing. Yeah, it's not like put it in a decanter for 24 hours.
Yeah, we're really excited to share this wine with people.
Wow, this is great. Cool. So
what are you opening this up with?
What am I going to eat with this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
because this is like, for me, this could be like a really beautiful grilled steak, like, if you get in New York or something like that.
I could do that. I was in Chicago a few weeks ago and I had a wood grilled ribeye cap.
Okay.
And that was, it was at a great steakhouse downtown, and that would be literal heaven on earth.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Very good. You guys keep making better and better wine. So we got one more wine. It's effectively our bonus wine tonight. It's not currently available for sale, but since we won't be doing another webinar for a little while, we figured we would chat about it, and anybody who's interested in our Beckstoffer to Kalon could benefit from some of this information. So 2019 to Kalon from Cliff Lede. This is one of our 3 Platinum Series wines. So if you know poetry, we also make songbook, and to Kalon being the other counterpart to those wines. All 3 of those wines come from, I would say, the most exceptional vineyards in Napa Valley. You have the Poetry Vineyard, which is part of our estate, where we've, at this point, Travis and team has made multiple 100-point wines off that vineyard. Madrona Ranch and Thorvilos for the songbook wine, which are 2 of David Abreu's vineyards that he takes care of and sells us a little bit of fruit from, again, which have just the critical acclaim over the years has just been remarkable. And then of course to Kalon. This is like Napa's sort of Grand Cru Cabernet vineyard.
Yeah,
and
I was gonna say you could change, instead of Platinum Playlist, it could be the Grand Cru.
Right, it
Napa
could be
Valley Vineyard.
It could be the Grand Cru collection. There you go. Well, you'll have to take it to marketing. But to Kalon is, I think, one of the most unique of the lineup, because it's 100% Cabernet from one site. So,
exactly.
Poetry is mostly Cabernet, but we do have some, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot on the hillside. And that wine tends to be a blend. Songbook also tends to be a blend, but this is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, Napa Valley, true to site.
Yeah, exactly. It acts more like kind of a Burgundy, being that it's like a single vineyard wine, 100%. So, yeah, I mean, To Kalon's very famous vineyard in Napa Valley. It's on the valley floor on the west side of 29, right kind of across from Oakville Crossroad.
Right by Robert Mondavi Winery. Opus One's right across the street. Yeah.
The funny thing, like, especially when we started first working with this vineyard, it doesn't stand out visually when you see it, right? Like there's nothing, a lot of these vineyards, when you look at a poetry vineyard, all you have to do is stand here and stare at it, and it's striking to you, and you can see like this is a special piece of land. Like the To Kalon vineyard doesn't jump out to you that way, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
But it really has beautiful soils. So there's about 5 different parent materials that are like coming off of the hillside on the Mayacamas west of the vineyard. And so all over the years, that's all broken down and drained down and onto the valley floor where the To Kalon vineyard's planted. And it's kind of this soil structure that gives it's like this gravelly loam that gives the fruit coming off of this vineyard this really distinct character. I mean, I think whenever you taste a To Kalon wine, certainly every year when we bring it in, we're always surprised at like, wow, this really does taste like To Kalon. No matter what the vintage is, coming out of the fermenters when we barrel this down, like that's kind of the one remarkable thing, and it's really beautiful. There's always like for us, for the Cliff Lede To Kalon sections that we get, we always have a really like graphite core to it. I mean, there's always like violets and blackberry and graphite or gravelly loam.
I was gonna say, like, I get that wet stone, quality in there a little bit. So maybe that's that graphite, but it is a very pure, expression of the varietal. You can smell that. It's, you're not getting like, Petit Verdot, you're not getting, that like little bit of, wildness from Malbec, or,
right.
Maybe not as much of the perfume from the Franc. It is very like Cabernet in really like one of the greatest forms it can be in.
Yeah, it's really striking. I think like, when we're blending, when we're trying to bring complexity in the blend, when we use some of those other varietals and like, soften edges and round things out and bring other flavors to the table. But, when you taste this To Kalon, like it's just kind of like lightning in a glass, right? It's so focused. And it is pretty incredible, the Cabernet.
And this is Oakville appellation, right? So
exactly.
Oakville, I mean, this is, one in Napa Valley. You got Stag's Leap, you got Oakville, Howell Mountain. These are really like some of the best appellations in all of Napa Valley. So, it is the only Oakville wine that we currently have as well, which is an interesting point. So it's a single vineyard, but it is from one of the greatest appellations. And we'll have a little bit more Oakville coming your way in the future. So we're excited about that. Be more on that as time progresses. Well, fantastic, man. I mean, another great effort. Similar, I think, to the Roundabout Midnight. I'm probably still grilling something on the barbecue for this. This might be one that you put in the cellar for a couple years.
Sure.
I mean, what would you think? Like a
absolutely.
few years, or?
I mean, I always, whenever people ask me aging, I always tell them, it reflects like how they enjoy drinking wine. So if you like drinking your wine younger with, a little more tannin structure, like for sure, 5 years, it tastes great. I mean, so you can drink it in 5 years. I think, ultimately, if you're going to lay it down 15 years, 15 years,
right.
20
this
years,
could go.
this
could go forever.
Yeah, it's got the structure, it's got the power. It could lay down nicely for sure.
Wonderful. Well, that covers it for the wine, but I see we've got some questions here in the chat. So we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. I'm going to go through these, but if anybody else has any questions at this point in time, please throw them our way. We'd be happy to answer them. So shout out to who we got in here. We got Mark's having some Sauvignon Blanc. Cheers to you, Mark. Sounds great. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, we got a question from Jane. Will FEL wines also be at the Rock Walk party? Yes, I believe we will have some FEL wines there. If we don't, you can come and find me and say, hey, you said there'd be FEL wines, so what's going on? And I'll find some to pour for you. But I would believe so. We always like to feature both brands when we can. Let's see.
Cheers to Freddie Mercury and Neil Young.
Yeah, you got that. Hey, cheers to them. We've also got, Kristen says we only have 10 cases of the 2009 Rock Block. So if you want to get some of that 2009, you got to strike while the iron's hot, because that is not going to last long. Let's see, Mark here, he loves big tannins. When winemaking, which is the grapes enable it to have wine. So when winemaking, which is the determining, I'm assuming he's asking, you know, what makes the tannins what they are.
Okay.
You know, thick skins.
Yeah.
You guys have ways of taming the tannin
Sure.
profiles,
So the
right?
the tannins from the grape are going to come from the skins and the seeds. So for a winemaking perspective, like we're going to extract more of that tannin. Like the tannin has to be in there in the grape to start with, right? But we're going to extract more or less of that tannin depending on how long during harvest when the wine sits on the skins and on the seeds, right?
Right.
And then also, you know, if you go into new barrels, you're going to get a little bit of oak tannin from a new barrel. You know, less from a once or twice used barrel, but more from a brand new barrel. So those are kind of the.
So you guys will kind of just, you know, dial in the particular lots to what you're tasting and what you're
Exactly.
seeing happen in the tanks and
exactly.
and
that's where, you know, during harvest when we're tasting, you know, after the fermentation's done, when we're on extended maceration, you know, that's when Chris and I are going around, we're tasting every tank and kind of we're watching that flavor and tannin profile to hit at a certain point when we like it, and then that's when we're making the call and draining the wine off of the skins.
I would say, you know, Mark,
question.
yeah, if you love big tannins, all these wines have beautiful refined tannin profiles, but this Tokalon has, I think out of all the wines we've tasted, has the most grip. So I would recommend the Tokalon. I got a question about what music am I listening to? I listen to everything. You know, I'm here at the winery most of the time, so of course there's a lot of rock and roll in my life. What are you listening to these days?
I listen to dad rock. Chris and I both kind of listen to dad rock. So wow, you know, like if you're thinking Wilco, something like that, you know, dad rock. Yeah, like indie rock around like the 90s. Gotcha. Turn of the century. I guess then I'll say I listen to some dad hip hop. Any hip hop around the 90s, I'm pretty happy there. So we can call it that. Let's see. So some thank yous there. No, thank you guys. Looks like that's all the questions for tonight. So we really do appreciate you all logging in to be here with us tonight. Again, you know, come see us at our Rock Block party. It's going to be a lot of fun. May 15th, a few weeks out. We still have a few tickets left, and it's going to just be so much fun. Can't wait to, you know, get a nice big group of people together again and share some awesome wines. Come and visit us at the winery for a tasting. If you can't make that Rock Block party, we'd love to have you out. Make sure you get your wine for the summer. You know, some of these markets, it gets harder to ship throughout the summer. So we'd be happy to put some wine together for you guys. If there's anything you want to taste, that 2009, again, there's not going to be a lot of that. Keep an eye out for the 2019 Tokalon release. And well, stay healthy, stay safe. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Travis. Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Hey, appreciate you coming on. Thanks cheers to Sarah Green for joining us, even despite the technical difficulties. But thank you all, and we'll see you all again soon. Reach out if there's anything you need at all.